Hello guys, Nick here. You're probably familiar with the expression your thoughts create your future. That is probably a reason you're watching this video. Well, today we have Dr. Joe Dispenza with us and he'll try to explain how that happens. He's a neuroscientist and he dedicated his life to study the mind and consciousness. He has some interesting information.
I think people right now, because they're so informed, are beginning to realize it's not enough to just know. That this is a time in history to know how. So rewind the tape 15 years ago, instead of me standing in front of an audience, people love the information, but to get them to actually do something with it, there was this kind of general resistance to doing something with it. Well now, people want to give their time to instruction, to learn how to apply it, to learn how to take that philosophical, theoretical, scientific knowledge and personalize it, to demonstrate it, to initiate it in some way, to modify their behaviors and do something differently. To me, we've done extensive brain scans. I now know people can change their brain in 1 hour. I've seen it. I know what a mystical experience looks like in the brain. I know how to induce it because we've studied it so much. I know when a person is in the midst of change, we can predict when it's happening. I know that people can begin to regulate emotional states and sustain them, that it can become a skill. We've seen gene changes in 4 days. We've seen immune regulation changes. We've seen telomere changes in 4 days and 60 days. That means you're lengthening your life.
And how do you measure the gene changes in 4 days?
So we did a randomized study with a group of people to measure 7,500 different gene regulations. And genes are like Christmas tree lights. They turn on and off all the time. When they regulate in a positive direction or when they're stimulated properly, they upregulate and they make healthy proteins. And genes make proteins, and proteins are responsible for the structure and function of your body. And the expression of proteins is the expression of life.
Is this epigenetics when they kind of turn on, or you can get them to turn on?
Yeah, it's the environment outside the cell. It's the information that's instructing and selecting the gene from outside the cell. Then if the information coming from the cell, say example is a stress hormone, the cell closes down and it downregulates and it starts making a cheaper protein, or it doesn't make the expression of proteins properly. So my interest was, okay, we now know that genes do not create disease. Less than 2% of the people on the planet are born with type 1 diabetes or sickle cell anemia or Tay-Sachs disease. The other 99 to 98% is created by lifestyle. You know, you can get two identical twins with the same genome. Why does one die at 57, the other one die at 85? Well, different environment, different perception of the environment, different behaviors, different choices. So then I wanted to see if people began to think differently, make different choices, do different things, create some new experiences, and feel and embrace different emotions. If that was new information coming into their nervous system, into the circulatory system, into their body, could we change the gene expression? Because we've witnessed people heal from cancer, and in a week we've seen people with MS heal in a few days. We've seen people with Hashimoto's syndrome change, rare genetic disorders change. We've seen all kinds of things change. But you just can't leave it up to, oh, that just changed. You have to close the gap between knowledge and experience. So the gene expression would be the piece that would say, wow, there were some changes. So all we wanted them to do is to do those specific things of thoughts, choices, behaviors, experiences, and emotions. And the other thing is that most people live by the same feelings every single day. You know, people wake up in the morning and your brain is a record of the past, so you wake up and you start thinking about your problems, and your problems are connected to certain people and things at certain times and places. The moment you start activating those circuits of memories related to the past experience and the environment, you're thinking in the past. Because every person, every thing, every place has a neurological network in your brain because you've experienced it. The end product of an experience is an emotion, so when you start thinking about your problems, you start feeling the emotions associated with them. You start feeling unhappy. So your thoughts are the vocabulary of your brain, your feelings are the vocabulary of your body. How you think and feel creates your state of being. So most people start their day, every single day, reaffirming their entire state of being in the familiar past.
Right.
Then they rush to the predictable future, right?
And this is probably 99.99% of humans in the world wake up.
In doing that in unconscious and habitually. So then they go through the same routine behaviors that they've been doing for the last 5 years. In their habitat is reinforcing their habits. And they're going through a series of unconscious choices, behaviors, experiences, and emotions. And they do that for 10 years, they're on autopilot. And their body's dragging them into a predictable future based on what they did in the past, and they've, in a sense, lost their free will to a program, right? And their body's dragging them into that genetic destiny.
How do we ever evolve if this is our default as humans? Do you ever wonder
crisis, trauma, disease, diagnosis, betrayal wakes people up from the program, right?
Okay.
So I assert if you're not in the present moment, you're running a program. So if a person's living by guilt and they don't know it's guilt because it just feels like they've been feeling that way every single day or suffering, and those emotions are driving their thoughts, and if they can't think greater than how they feel, and feelings and emotions are a record of the past or thinking in the past. Now, if you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny,
which most people do agree.
Well, yeah, so then your past is going to be your future.
Right.
We can, in fact, there's no magic there. You're going to lift your past up and set it on your future, and it's going to be a predictable life for most people, right?
Right. But most people want to break that.
Of course, they don't understand the formula, they don't understand the technology. So then the emotion drives the thought. The thought turns on the same circuits in the brain, produces the same neuropeptides that signal the same hormonal centers. You feel the same way. If you think you're a failure, you feel like a failure. Once you feel like a failure, you think you're more of a failure. And people get caught in these loops. Well,
sometimes I'm caught in one of those loops and I'm like, I've been hanging out with Dr. Joe and I know I can outthink myself out of this, but sometimes I'm like, I'm angry. I know my anger is giving me a worse destiny, but I can't get out of the anger loop.
Well, just think about it. If you think you can't stop something, then you're a junkie, right? I mean, you're addicted on some level. You're conditioned, right?
Right.
Let's take a quick stop here. So, genes actually doesn't create disease. We do this, humans, with our perception. We live on autopilot almost whole life, and then we wonder why nothing new and exciting is happening. If we spend the majority of our life in bad mood, how could good things happen? But the good news is, we are in charge. Let's go on.
Even though it's a bad emotion, you can still be addicted to that. Of course,
but the rush of those stress hormones creates an arousal, and so then people really think that they can't control that. So the redundancy of that cycle over time, your body is believing it's in the same environmental experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because the body doesn't know the difference between the real experience that's creating the emotion and the emotion that you're creating by thought alone. The body's believing it's in that environmental condition, so you're hitting the same gene. You're signaling the same gene in the same way, and you're making the same protein. And if it's derived from anything like anger or frustration or fear and impatience, the long-term effects of those chemicals begin to downregulate genes and create disease. And so people now get their genetic buttons pushed. So then, okay, what if we can break that cycle in our event and teach people how to elevate their emotional state and have those emotions drive new thoughts and think that way, sit in their meditations, stand in their meditations, walk in their meditations, be calm, lay down in all the ways we possibly can, retreat from your life and remove the environment and work on you and changing your inner world to see if it's going to produce an outpicturing in your outer world. So we measured 7,500 gene expressions, and we wanted to see the common genes of those 35 or 40 individuals that they were expressing. Now, they all had their own gene expression, but what were the common ones that they expressed? There were two genes that were expressed that literally downregulate cancer genes, that reduce cancer and tumors and growth. A gene that grows new neurons in your brain, not just new connections, but the growth of new neurons in response to novel experiences and learning. Genes that stimulate stem cells that go to damaged tissues and repair them, to repair damaged tissues, regeneration. The gene for oxidative stress was downregulated, which means anti-cancer, anti-aging, anti-heart disease, anti-stroke, anti-inflammatory, anti-neurodegenerative, antimicrobial. This is what the antioxidant does. Genes that regulate the immune system to become stronger. Genes that stimulate the microtubules in the cells, the cellular structure, the integrity of the cells were getting stronger. So we now know that in 4 days, people were regulating genes for even their pituitary working better. So we are our own genetic engineers, and when we begin to understand that if the environment signals the gene, and the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion, when you embrace an emotion ahead of the actual experience in your environment, you're signaling the gene ahead of the environment. And your gene begins to change your protein expression, which means you literally become the very person you want to be. So we now know if we give people numerous opportunities to connect, we give them a good model for them to wrap their mind around, and we give them an opportunity to overcome themselves, that as the week goes on, more and more people start hooking in. They start getting it. And all of a sudden, we have the first person stand up and say, hey, I know no one's going to believe this, but I've had MS for 21 years. I've been walking with crutches. I have not been able to feel my chest, my arms, my lips, my face. I've been struggling with motor function, sensory function. I haven't been seeing very well. And I don't know what happened after that meditation, but I felt a level of love I've never felt in my entire life. Now remember, the emotion is signaling the gene before they're ever in the environment. They're not waiting for the healing to feel the love for life. The love for life is actually creating the healing, right? So how you then get past that point and teach people how to do that. So now,
but you're breaking patterns that they could never break on their own.
Well, we're moving a community of 1,000 people or 1,200 people from one state of mind and body to the other.
Right, so collective energy.
Collective energy.
Taking them to places they would normally never be.
Taking them further than they normally would go, because on the other side of their fear is courage. On the other side of their pain is freedom.
So fear would pull them back a lot of times if they tried to do this
Once
themselves.
they get to that uncomfortable feeling, they get to the edge, they stop. But if you can explain where that edge is and what that discomfort is, they're venturing to go. And then there's a disentangling of the programs for a day where people are in chaos, and you can measure brain activity, and there's dissonance, and the whole brain is in disorder, and that's when they want to quit.
Right.
But if they go one more time and they apply the formula, you see this massive reorganization take place, and all of a sudden, they're smiling. Now, the side effect of that, when that person with MS stands on the stage in front of 1,200 people and says, I got to tell you my story, and they tell you their story, and it's a real person. They don't look like a movie star, and it's not a Hollywood version, and they're not buffed and slender and look like a vegetarian or whatever. They're just a common person, and you can relate with them. And I'm standing out looking in the audience, and I'm watching people well up with tears. They're witnessing a miracle, a transformation. You can't go back to business as usual. You can't go back to being the same person because you know so much. So then, whether it's a psychiatrist that has Parkinson's disease that did everything to take care of it, the next thing you know, he's standing on the stage saying, look, no tremors in this hand. I'm a psychiatrist. Something's happening to me. I'm going to keep going here. They're starting to believe in their future more than they're believing in their past. They tell that story, and people are listening to that story. The beauty behind it is they begin to relate with them, and it's like a 4-minute mile. Boom, you break that veneer, you pierce that level of consciousness, you break that level of awareness, and then as soon as the 4-minute mile was broken, 2 weeks later, the next person broke it, and then all of a sudden everybody started doing it. Well, it's the same collective consciousness that's happening. There's a footprint in consciousness.
I hope this was helpful. I hope Joe is explaining this simple enough so everybody could understand. So we can conclude that we have to change ourselves. We have to change our thoughts and feelings to get the change we desire. Remember, nothing is out of your control. If this helped you, share this video with your friends. I would like to know what you think about this, so leave the comment below and subscribe and hit the bell button for new videos. Have a great day.